This is question number 226 of the series. A company wants to provide one of its employees with access to Amazon RDS. The company also wants to limit the interaction to only the AWS CLI and AWS software development kits. Which combination of actions should the company take to meet these requirements while following the principles of least privilege? You need to choose two options. And the option provided are create an IAM user and provide programmatic access only, create an IAM policy with administrator access and attach it to the IAM user, create an IAM user and provide AWS Management Console access only, create an IAM policy with Amazon RDS access and attach it to the IAM user, create an IAM role and provide AWS Management Console access only. Requirement of the question is to limit the interaction to AWS using CLI and SDK. In other words, employees shouldn't be able to access it using GUI, and the actions that will enable you to implement this requirement are create an IAM user and provide programmatic access only, and create an IAM policy with Amazon RDS access and attach it to the IAM user, which are option A and option D. Now let's look at why other options are incorrect. Option B grants admin access, which is too broad of a permission and doesn't follow AWS principle of least privilege, making it an incorrect choice. Option C and option E talk about management console access, which makes them incorrect as the key requirement is to limit the access to CLI and SDK only. A company previously lost data that was stored in an on-premise data center. To prevent or protect against future loss of data, the company wants to use AWS to automatically launch thousands of its machines in a fully provisioned state in minutes, in a format that supports data restoration. Which AWS service should the company use to meet these requirements? And the options are AWS Backup, AWS Storage Gateway, Cloud Endure Disaster Recovery, AWS Direct Connect. Cloud Endure Disaster Recovery continuously replicates your machines, including virtual machines, operating systems, system state configuration, databases, applications, and files into a low-cost staging area in your target AWS account and preferred region. In the case of a disaster, you can instruct Cloud Endure Disaster Recovery to automatically launch thousands of your machines in their fully provisioned state in minutes. Which of the following components must be attached to a VPC to enable inbound internet access? Internet gateway, VPC endpoint, NAT gateway, VPN connection. To enable inbound internet access to a virtual private cloud in AWS, you typically need to attach the internet gateway. Attaching an internet gateway to your VPC allows instances in the VPC to send and receive traffic directly to and from the internet. Let's move to next question. A cloud practitioner needs an Amazon EC2 instance to launch and run for 7 hours without interruptions. What is the most suitable and cost-effective option to accomplish this task? Your options are spot instance, reserved instance, on-demand instance, dedicated host. Correct answer here would be option C, on-demand instance. Even though spot instance could be least expensive, but that comes with a possibility of interruption, so won't be a correct choice in this case. Reserved instances and dedicated host won't have any interruptions, but would be costlier options in this scenario where instances only needed for 7 hours. So folks, based on the scenario given to you in the question, the choice of the effective option would always change. So make sure to spot the keywords in the question. Question number 230 of the series. Which AWS service is a cloud security posture management service that aggregates alerts from various AWS services and partner products in a standardized format? And the options are Amazon Guard Duty, AWS Security Hub, AWS Trusted Advisor, Amazon Event Bridge. AWS Security Hub is a service that provides a comprehensive view of your security posture across your AWS accounts. It aggregates, organizes, and prioritizes security findings from various AWS services as well as from AWS partner solutions. It presents these findings in a standardized format, making it easier to analyze and act upon security alerts. Question number 231 of the series. Companies using AWS Identity and Access Management, who among the following can manage the access keys of the AWS account root user? And the options being AWS account owner, IAM roles in any account that have been granted permission, IAM users in the same account that have been granted permission, IAM users and roles that have been granted permission. The management of access keys for the AWS account root user is restricted to AWS account owner only. Which Amazon S3 feature or storage class uses the AWS backbone network and edge locations to reduce latencies from the end user to Amazon S3? Your options are S3 standard infrequent access, S3 transfer acceleration, S3 cross-region replication, S3 event notifications. Correct answer here is S3 transfer acceleration. It uses CloudFront Content Delivery Network to accelerate uploads to Amazon S3. It leverages Amazon CloudFront's globally distributed edge locations to reduce latency and increase transfer speeds. This feature is particularly useful for large object uploads and can improve the speed at which users can upload data to a S3 bucket. Folks, before we move forward, as a reminder, if you have registered for the channel membership and looking to get PDF access, then email me at devopshub2023@gmail.com to gain access. The email ID is available on your screen as well now. You can reach out to me on the same email address if you want to book a career consultation session as well. Which of the following AWS service could an administrator use to provide desktop environments for several employees? Options being AWS organizations, AWS workspaces, AWS WAF, AWS Fargate. The AWS service that an administrator could use to perform desktop environments for several employees is AWS workspaces. AWS Workspace is the fully managed desktop computing service in the cloud. It allows you to provision virtual cloud-based desktops for your users, providing a desktop experience on various devices. With Workspaces, administrators can easily scale and manage desktop environments for multiple employees, and users can access their desktops from anywhere with an internet connection. Question number 234 of the series. Which of the following statements are examples of a company's effort to right-size its AWS resources to control cloud costs? You need to choose two options. And the options are use multi-AZ deployments for Amazon RDS, switch from Amazon RDS to Amazon DynamoDB to accommodate NoSQL datasets, use Amazon S3 lifecycle policies to move objects that users access infrequently to lower cost storage tiers, replace existing Amazon EC2 instances with AWS Elastic Beanstalk, base the selection of Amazon EC2 instance types on past utilization patterns. And the correct answers are option C and option E. Let's now see why other options are incorrect. The first option, which is multi-AZ deployments, provides high availability and failover support in Amazon RDS, but is more related to ensuring system resilience than directly controlling costs, making it an incorrect choice. Option B is related to choice of database service and not necessarily a right-sizing effort. DynamoDB and RDS cater to different use cases and performance requirements. Option D regarding Elastic Beanstalk is a platform as a service offering for deploying and managing applications, but doesn't specifically address right sizing of underlying resources, which is why it is also an incorrect choice. Company wants to receive alerts when resources that are launched in the company's AWS account reach 80% of their service quotas. Which AWS service should the company use to meet this requirement? Your options being AWS Trusted Advisor, AWS Config, AWS CloudTrail, Amazon Inspector. And the correct answer would be AWS Trusted Advisor. AWS Trusted Advisor is a service that provides real-time guidance to help you provision resources following best practices, optimize resources for better performance, and enhance security by identifying potential vulnerabilities. It also includes checks for service quotas and can alert you when you are approaching or exceeding certain resource limits. So folks, this is question number 236 of the series. A company is using AWS for all its IT infrastructure. The company's developers are allowed to deploy applications on their own. The developers want to deploy their applications without having to provision the infrastructure themselves. Which AWS service should the developers use to meet these requirements? Your options are AWS CloudFormation, AWS Code Build, AWS Code Deploy, AWS Elastic Beanstalk. In this case, the requirement is deploying application without having to provision the infrastructure themselves. And to accomplish these requirements, the developers should use Elastic Beanstalk, which is a fully managed service that simplifies the deployment and scaling of applications. Developers can upload their code and Elastic Beanstalk automatically handles the deployment details, such as provisioning the necessary infrastructure, which includes Amazon EC2 instances, load balancing, auto-scaling, and monitoring. It abstracts away the underlying infrastructure complexities, allowing developers to focus on writing code and deploying applications. Which of the following AWS service or tool lists all the users in an account and reports on the status of account details, including passwords, access keys, and multi-factor authentication devices? Options being AWS Shield, Amazon Inspector, IAM Credential Report, AWS Trusted Advisor. IAM Credential Report provides detailed information about the IAM users and their respective credential status, including password last use, access key activity, and MFA device information. It is a comprehensive report that helps administrators monitor and manage the security aspects of IAM users in an AWS account. Question number 238. A company has stopped all of its Amazon EC2 instances, but monthly billing charges continue to occur. Which of the following could be the potential cause of this? You need to choose two options. And your options are input-output charges, Elastic IP charges, operating system charges, Amazon Elastic Block storage charges, hardware charges. If Elastic IP addresses are associated with a stopped instance, they are subject to charges. Then the EBS volumes are billed separately from EC2 instances, and the charges continue as long as the volume exists. So it doesn't matter if the instance is stopped. A company needs to perform data processing once a week that typically takes about 5 hours to complete. Which AWS service should the company use for this workload? AWS Code Deploy, AWS Wavelength, Amazon EC2, AWS Lambda. Amazon EC2 would be the correct choice in this scenario, while AWS Lambda is a serverless computing service that is event-driven, but it has an execution time limit of 15 minutes. And the key requirement in this question is job is taking 5 hours to complete, making AWS Lambda as the incorrect choice here. So folks, even though when you move to cloud, you are encouraged that you should go ahead and use serverless computing, but it is very important that you analyze the scenario being talked about in this question. AWS Lambda is one of the mostly consumed service of AWS, but here the requirement is that you need to run a workload which will take around 5 hours. So AWS Lambda is not a correct choice, and you will choose AWS EC2 for this requirement. Question number 240 of the series. A company provides Amazon workspaces to its remote employees. The company wants to prevent employees from using their virtual desktops to visit specific websites that are known to be malicious. Which AWS service should the company use to meet this requirement? Your options are Amazon Network Firewall, Amazon Route 53, AWS Shield Advanced, Amazon Guard Duty. AWS Network Firewall is a managed firewall service that allows you to filter and inspect traffic based on the rules you define. By using AWS Network Firewall, the company can set up rules to block access to specific malicious websites, providing an additional layer of security for the Amazon workspace environment. A user has a stateful workload that will run on Amazon EC2 for the next 3 years. What is the most cost-effective pricing model for this workload? Your options being spot instances, dedicated instances, on-demand instances, reserved instances. The most cost-effective pricing model in this case will be reserved instances. Reserved instances provide a significant discount compared to on-demand instances, as you can commit to a 1 year or 3 year term in exchange of lower hourly rates. That's why you would prefer reserved instances here over on-demand instances in this scenario. However, this choice will vary based on the scenario you have in question. So please ensure to read the scenario properly before answering such questions. Which of the following AWS service stores graph data in the form of vertices and edges? Your options being Amazon DynamoDB, Amazon Neptune, Amazon RDS, Amazon Quantum Ledger Database, which is Amazon QLDB. The correct answer here would be Amazon Neptune. Let's look at next question. Which of the following AWS services or resources can a company use directly on its on-premise servers? You need to choose 2 options here. Your options are AWS CloudFormation, Amazon Cognito, Application Load Balancer, AWS OpsWorks, AWS Storage Gateway. And the correct answers are on your screen, which is AWS OpsWorks and AWS Storage Gateway. A large company has a workload that requires hardware to remain on premises. The company wants to use the same management and control plane services that it currently uses on AWS. Which AWS service should the company use to meet these requirements? Options given are AWS Fargate, AWS Outposts, AWS Ground Station, AWS Device Form. The appropriate choice here would be AWS Outposts, which is fully managed service that extends AWS infrastructure services and tools to your on-premise facility. It allows you to run AWS compute, storage, database, and other services on your AWS hardware while still using the AWS management tools, APIs, and services. Question number 245. A company wants to limit its employees' AWS access to a portfolio of predefined AWS resources. Which AWS solution should the company use to meet this requirement? And options are AWS Config, AWS AppSync, AWS Software Deployment Kit, which is SDK, and then the last option is AWS Service Catalog. The correct answer here would be AWS Service Catalog, which allows organizations to create and manage catalogs of IT services that are approved for use on AWS. With Service Catalog, you can define and control which AWS resources and services are available to your employees, and you can set up constraints to manage resource configurations. This helps in ensuring that users only have access to resources that are part of the predefined portfolio. So folks, I hope this clarifies why AWS Service Catalog is the right choice in this case. Question number 246 of the series. a company needs to establish a connection between two VPCs. The VPCs are located in two different AWS regions. The company wants to use the existing infrastructure of the VPCs for this connection. Which AWS service or feature can be used to establish this connection? Your options being AWS Client VPN, VPC endpoints, VPC peering, and AWS Direct Connect. To establish a connection between two VPCs located in different AWS regions and use the existing infrastructure, you can use VPC peering. VPC peering allows you to connect two VPCs and route traffic between them using private IP addresses. It is a networking connection between two VPCs that allows you to route traffic between them using private IP addresses, which can be IPv4 or IPv6. This is useful for scenarios where you want to share resources or communicate between applications in different regions, which is what is being talked about in this question. Which AWS service or feature identifies whether an Amazon S3 bucket or an IAM role has been shared with an external entity? The choices given are AWS Service Catalog, AWS Organizations, AWS Systems Manager, AWS IAM Access Analyzer. As the name indicates, AWS IAM Access Manager Analyzer is the correct choice here, and it helps you identify resources in your organization and accounts such as Amazon S3 buckets or IAM roles that are shared with external entities. Now, what it does is it uses automated reasoning to analyze policies and provide findings for resources that are shared with external principals. A company does not want to rely on elaborate forecasting to determine its usage of compute resources. Instead, the company wants to pay only for the resources that it uses. The company also needs the ability to increase or decrease its resource usage to meet business requirements. Which pillar of the AWS well-architected framework aligns with these requirements? Your options being security, cost optimization, reliability, operational excellence. Now, to summarize the given requirement, company is looking to save on costs and which aligns with the cost optimization pillar of well-architected framework. Let's look at another question, which is again related to the well-architected framework. A company has designed its AWS cloud infrastructure to run its workloads effectively. The company also has protocols in place to continuously improve supporting processes. Which pillar of the AWS well-architected framework does the scenario represent? Your options are security, cost optimization, reliability, operational excellence. This aligns with the operational excellence pillar of AWS well-architected framework. The operational excellence pillar focuses on operational practices and procedures that enable an organization to monitor, operate, and evolve its workloads effectively. It includes areas such as incident response, evolving procedures over time, and the use of automation to improve processes. Continuous improvement and the ability to respond to operational events are key aspects of the operational excellence pillar. Folks, if you are liking the content till now, then don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe the channel as well. Let's look at question number 250 of the series. A company has a physical tape library to store data backups. The tape library is running out of space. The company needs to extend the tape library's capacity to the AWS cloud. Which AWS service should the company use to meet this requirement? And your options are AWS Storage Gateway, Amazon Elastic Block Store, which is EBS. Then the third option is Amazon Elastic File System, which is EFS. And the last option is Amazon S3. AWS Storage Gateway is a service that can be used to extend the tape library's capacity to the AWS cloud. Storage Gateway is a hybrid storage service that allows users to connect their on-premise data centers to the AWS cloud. It provides a range of storage options, including file-based, block-based, and tape-based storage, which can be used to store data backups and other types of data. Next question. A retail company needs to build a highly available architecture for a new e-commerce platform. The company is using only AWS services that replicate data across multiple availability zones. Which AWS service should the company use to meet this requirement? You need to choose two options here. Your options are Amazon Aurora, Amazon EC2, Amazon DynamoDB, Amazon EBS, Amazon Redshift. For building a highly available architecture in AWS that replicates data across multiple availability zones, you should choose service that offers cross-AZ replication. And the two services that meet this requirement from the provided options are Amazon Aurora and Amazon DynamoDB. Aurora is a relational database service that provides high performance and availability. It supports cross-AZ replication to enhance availability and fault tolerance. Whereas DynamoDB is a managed NoSQL database service that automatically replicates data across multiple AZs to ensure high availability and fault tolerance, making them as the correct choice in this scenario. Next question. A company has a critical application that runs at a remote site that has a slow internet connection. The company wants to migrate the workload to AWS. The application is sensitive to latency and interruptions in connectivity. The company wants a solution that can host this application with minimum latency. Which AWS service or feature should the company use to meet these requirements? Your options are AWS Local Zones, AWS Outposts, AWS Wavelength, Availability Zones. For a manufacturing company with a critical application that is sensitive to latency and interruptions in connectivity, and given that the company wants a solution with minimum latency, the most suitable AWS service would be AWS Outposts. So folks, there are lots of keywords in this question which are pointing to what can be the correct solution. As I always say, it is very critical you find those keywords and your answer will be, it will be very easy for you to answer the questions. And now, AWS Outposts allow you to run AWS infrastructure on-premise to address specific latency and data residency requirements. It extends the AWS infrastructure to your on-premise location, providing a consistent hybrid experience. So folks, this is just the definition of AWS Outposts, which was tweaked in different words and written as a question in front of you. Question number 253. A company wants to use the AWS cloud to provide secure access to desktop applications that are running in a fully managed environment. Which AWS service should the company use to meet these requirements? Your options are AWS AppSync, AWS Outposts, Amazon S3, Amazon AppStream 2.0. And the correct answer is Amazon AppStream 2.0, which is a fully managed application streaming service that allows you to stream desktop applications securely to users without the need for the applications to be installed locally on their devices. It provides a scalable and secure way to deliver applications to a variety of devices, including desktops, laptops, and mobile devices. A company is designing its AWS workload so that components can be updated regularly and so that changes can be made in small reversible increments. Which pillar of the AWS well-architected framework does this design support? Your options are security, reliability, performance efficiency, operational excellence. Keywords to answer this question are regular, small, reversible changes, which aligns with the operational excellence pillar of the well-architected framework. Let's look at one such similar question in a different form. A company simulates workflows to review and validate that all processes are effective and that staff are familiar with the processes. Which design principle of the AWS well-architected framework is the company following with this practice? Your options are refine operation procedures frequently, perform operation as code, structure the company to support business outcomes, make frequent small reversible changes. Here, the company is continuously trying to review and validate its processes for effectiveness, which aligns with the principle of refining operation procedures frequently. So, folks, there are different variations to the questions around well-architected framework. It is very critical that you should know all the pillars of the well-architected framework, as you can expect some questions around this in the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam. A company manages global applications that require static IP addresses. Which AWS service would enable the company to improve the availability and performance of its applications? Your options are Amazon API Gateway, AWS Global Accelerator, Amazon S3 Transfer Acceleration, Amazon CloudFront. And the correct answer here is AWS Global Accelerator, which is designed to enhance the availability and performance of applications by utilizing static IP addresses, also called as anycast IPs. The keyword in this question is you need to use static IP addresses. And that's why AWS Global Accelerator is the correct answer. It directs traffic over the AWS global network to optimal AWS endpoint locations based on health, geography, and routing policies that you configure. This helps in distributing incoming traffic across multiple endpoints, improving application availability, and providing low latency access to users. If you are interested in reading more about Global Accelerator, then there is a link on your screen now. Browse to the link and read more about it. Question number 257 of the series. A user has been granted permissions to change their own IAM user password. Which AWS services can the user use to change the password? You need to choose two options here. And the options given are AWS Command Line Interface, AWS Key Management Service, AWS Secrets Manager, AWS Management Console, AWS Resource Access Manager. And the correct answers are AWS Command Line Interface and AWS Management Console. You can use both of these services to change the IAM user password. Next question. A company needs to generate reports for business intelligence and operational analytics on petabytes of semi-structured and structured data. These reports are produced from standard SQL queries on data that is in an Amazon S3 data lake. Which AWS service provides the ability to analyze this data? And your options are Amazon Neptune, Amazon DynamoDB, Amazon Redshift, Amazon RDS. For analyzing petabytes of semi-structured and structured data stored in an Amazon S3 data lake using standard SQL queries, the most appropriate AWS service is Amazon Redshift. Amazon Redshift is ideal for large-scale data warehousing and analytics with support for SQL queries. So folks, in this question, there is a talk about data warehousing. There are many keywords in this question which are referencing to data warehousing. And the service which is used for data warehousing in Amazon or AWS is Redshift. So it is very important you identify the keywords properly and then you correlate it with the service that is relevant to that keyword. Question number 259 of the series. A company needs to deploy a PostgreSQL database into Amazon RDS. The database must be highly available and fault tolerant. Which AWS solution should the company use to meet these requirements? Your options are Amazon RDS with a single availability zone, Amazon RDS snapshots, Amazon RDS with a multiple availability zone, AWS database migration service. To achieve high availability and fault tolerance, recommended approach is to use Amazon RDS with multiple availability zones or multi-AZ configurations. The other options, which is Amazon RDS with a single availability zone, does not provide the same level of fault tolerance as multi-AZ deployment. If the availability zone where the database is located experiences issues, there may be a downtime. So this will not meet the requirement of highly available and fault tolerant database. And then the next option, which is Amazon RDS snapshots. The snapshots are backup of the databases at a specific point in time. While they are important for backup and recovery, they don't inherently provide high availability or fault tolerance. And the last option, AWS Database Migration Service, is a service for migrating databases. While it can be used for certain scenarios, it's not specifically designed for providing high availability or fault tolerance, which is the key requirement in this question. Let's look at question number 260 of the series. Which of the following tasks is the responsibility of the customer according to the AWS shared responsibility model? Your options are patch Amazon RDS software, maintain the security of the AWS global infrastructure, maintain the security of the hardware that runs Amazon EC2 instances, patch the guest operating system of Amazon EC2 instances. Let's look at first option, which is patch Amazon RDS software. This task is responsibility of AWS. AWS manages and applies patches to underlying infrastructure and software that runs managed services like Amazon RDS. The second option is maintain the security of the AWS global infrastructure. This is the responsibility of AWS again. AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud infrastructure, including data centers, networking, and hardware that supports their services. And the third option, which is maintain the security of the hardware that runs Amazon EC2 instances, is again the responsibility of AWS, because AWS is responsible for managing the physical security of the infrastructure, including the hardware on which EC2 instances run. And the final option, patch the guest operating system of Amazon EC2 instances, is the responsibility of the customer. The customers are responsible for maintaining the security of their virtual machines, which is EC2 instances in this case, including patching the operating system, the guest operating system, configuring security groups, and managing applications and data. So folks, there can be multiple variations of this question itself. Here they are talking about patching the guest operating system, but there can be a variation where they can also mention configuring security groups, or even say managing the application data on Amazon EC2 instances. So I would highly recommend you to be across AWS shared responsibility model, as you can get multiple questions around it in your exam. And this part of the series will also have few questions around shared responsibility model. So without wasting much time, let's look at next question of this part of the series. An e-commerce company has migrated its infrastructure from an on-premise data center to the AWS cloud. Which cost is the company's direct responsibility? Your options are cost of the power for the AWS servers, cost of the application software licenses, cost of the hardware infrastructure on AWS, cost of physical security for the AWS data center. And the correct answer here is cost of application software licenses. Let's look at next question of this part of the series, which is question number 262. Which of the following are shared controls that apply to both AWS and the customer according to the AWS shared responsibility model? You need to choose two options. And your options are network data integrity, resource configuration management, physical and environmental security, replacement and disposal of disk drives, employee awareness and training. And the correct options are resource configuration management and employee awareness and training. With regards to resource configuration management, while AWS manages the security of the cloud infrastructure, customers are responsible for configuring and securing their own resources, including setting access controls, configuring security groups, and managing configurations. Now, with regards to employee awareness and training, AWS provides a secure cloud infrastructure, but customers are responsible for educating their personals on security best practices, managing access credentials, and ensuring that employees are aware of security policies and procedures. This is question number 263. Which is the least expensive AWS support plan that contains a full set of AWS Trusted Advisor best practice checks? Your options are AWS Basic Support, AWS Developer Support, AWS Business Support, and AWS Enterprise Support. Full set of AWS Trusted Advisor best practice checks is available to customers with business support plan or above. And the question talks about least expensive option. So the correct answer is AWS Business Support Plan. With AWS Basic Support Plan, only service quota and basic security checks are available. Next question. A global company is building a simple time tracking mobile app. The app needs to operate globally and must store collected data in a database. Data must be accessible from the AWS region that is closest to the user. What should the company do to meet these data storage requirements with the least amount of operational overhead? Now, the keywords here are company needs to meet the data storage requirement with least amount of operational overhead. Your options are use Amazon EC2 in multiple regions to host separate databases, use Amazon RDS cross-region replication, use AWS database migration service, use Amazon DynamoDB global tables. And the correct answer here is option D, use Amazon DynamoDB global tables. DynamoDB global tables provide a fully managed multi-region and highly available NoSQL database solution. With DynamoDB global tables, you can replicate data across multiple AWS regions, and the service takes care of the underlying replication and management. This allows your app to read and write data with low latency access from the regions closest to the user. Now, if you would have chosen option A, which is use Amazon EC2 in multiple regions to host separate databases, this option would have meant a lot of operational overhead. So, as I always say, the keyword in this question to identify the right option was avoid or probably least amount of operational overhead. That is why we have chosen option D, which is use Amazon DynamoDB global tables. Question number 265 of the series. How does the AWS cloud help companies build agility into their processes and cloud infrastructure? Your options are companies can access a range of technologies to experiment and innovate quickly. Companies can avoid provisioning too much capacity when they do not know how much capacity is required. Companies can expand into new geographic regions. Companies can pay for IT resources only when they use the resources. And the correct answer here is option A. Companies can access a range of technologies to experiment and innovate quickly. Let's look at next question. A company has a serverless application that includes an Amazon API gateway, an AWS Lambda function, and an Amazon DynamoDB database. Which AWS service can the company use to track user requests as they move through the application's components? Your options are AWS X-Ray, AWS CloudTrail, Amazon CloudWatch, and Amazon Inspector. And the correct answer here would be option A, AWS X-Ray, which is a distributed tracing service that helps developers analyze and debug applications. It allows you to trace user requests as they travel through various components of your application, providing insights into performance bottlenecks and dependencies between different services. So folks, there is a link on your screen at the moment. You can refer to this link to read more about AWS X-Ray. Question number 267 of the series. Which AWS service offers gateway VPC endpoints that can be used to avoid sending traffic over the internet? And you need to choose two correct options here. and you have been given 5 options, which are Amazon S3, AWS Code Build, Amazon Simple Queue Service, Amazon DynamoDB, and Amazon Simple Notification Service. The AWS services that offer gateway VPC endpoints allowing you to avoid sending traffic over the internet are S3 and DynamoDB. Next question. Which of the following is the customer responsible for updating and patching according to the AWS shared responsibility model? Your options are AWS Directory Service for Microsoft Active Directory, Amazon RDS for Microsoft SQL Server, Amazon Workspaces Virtual Windows Desktop, and Amazon FSx for Windows File Server. AWS recommends that you regularly patch, update, and secure the operating system and applications of your workspaces, which is option C. You can configure your workspaces to be updated by Workspace during a regular maintenance window, or you can update them yourself. You can browse through the link on your screen to read more about workspaces management. Next question. A company implements an Amazon EC2 auto scaling policy along with an application load balancer to automatically recover unhealthy applications that run on Amazon EC2 instances. Which pillar of the AWS well-architected framework does this action cover? Your options are reliability, security, performance efficiency, and operational excellence. The action of implementing an Amazon EC2 auto-scaling policy along with the application load balancer to automatically recover unhealthy applications that run on Amazon EC2 aligns with the reliability pillar of the AWS well-architected framework. The reliability pillar focuses on the ability of a workload to recover from failures and meet customer demands by detecting and mitigating disruptions. Implementing auto-scaling and using a load balancer are strategies that enhance the reliability of the system by automatically adjusting the capacity to handle varying workloads and recovering from instances or components that may become unhealthy. So folks, let's look at question number 270 of the series. A company launched an Amazon EC2 instance with the latest Amazon Linux 2 AMI. Which actions can a system administrator take to connect to the EC2 instance? You need to choose 2 options here, and the given options are use Amazon Connect, use AWS Batch, use Amazon EC2 Instance Connect, use AWS Systems Manager Session Manager, use a remote desktop protocol connection. And the correct answers are use Amazon EC2 Instance Connect and use Amazon or AWS Systems Manager Sessions Manager. EC2 Instance Connect provides a simple and secure way to connect to instances using SSH, which is secure shell. It eliminates the need to manage SSH keys manually. You can connect to the EC2 instance directly through the AWS Management Console. Whereas AWS Systems Manager Session Manager allows you to manage your Amazon EC2 instances through an interactive one-click browser-based shell or through the AWS CLI. It provides a secure and auditable way to access instances. So folks, there are many more questions that I would like to bring forward. So stay tuned. If you liked the content, then do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe the channel so it reaches the wider audience and everyone in the community is benefited from this content. If you have passed the exam using this content, do not forget to tag me in your LinkedIn post so everyone knows that there is some content available for them to refer. I'll see you in the next video.